Hello, everyone. In this episode, I want to walk through one of the last things that we'll talk about in this basic Java series, and that will be a type of data structure, and it's known as arrays. So, before I explain anything, I'm going to go ahead and just start a new file, save it, and I'm going to save it as arrays.java. Arrays.java. Cool. And then I'm gonna just give us some more space and get rid of my text file over here. So I'm gonna go ahead with the basic procedure: public class arrays. Be sure to tag it end of class arrays. And I'm only gonna be staying in the main method over here. Even though we know how to write other methods, for the time being, I'm just going to stay in the main method so that things are not as complex. Since that'll be mixing a brand new topic that I'm going to teach you and something that we've already learned, which just not it's not the best way to approach this. And so an array is essentially a data structure, and it's a way to store a single type of information, right? And so let's think of it as like a list, right? But it's a one-dimensional list. So think of it like a number line where every single point on the number line contains a string or an int. A number line is just an array, a horizontal array, and every dot is just an integer value or a float or a double, depending on what kind of a number line you're dealing with. And so I'm going to show you how to initialize it. So we can write something like int, right? So this will mean that this array will only have int values, and then we put the box braces, and so that shows that this is going to be an array, and then we write the name. So let's just call that num array is going to be equal to, and then we need to write the keyword new, new int, and then so int array, right? And then we can write how many spaces we want to block in here, right? So we have to remember that an array is something that is immutable. So once I write 7, right, it's not gonna I won't have space to write or add another element, right? So I'm just gonna make this a 5 spaced element and then end that off with a brace. Cool. Now what I can do is I'm gonna just open up a new text file, and I'm just gonna write examples.txt so that I can explain it, right? So essentially what I have made is I have 0, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? So I have 5 spaces in my array, starting with 0 and ending with 4. And essentially I have these 4 areas or 5 areas to place values, number values, integer values, right? And so that's exactly what I'm going to do. So what I can do is I can write like num array, right? And then in parentheses or in the box braces, I can write at which index value, right? So let's say I want to fill the first index value, which if you look over here would be index 0. I'm going to fill that, so index 0, and I want to fill that value with, let's say 24. Right? Then I can do num array, index value 1, and I want to fill that with this 423, right? I can do it like that. And so let's see what this array contains, right? Because we haven't filled 2, 3, and 4. So let's see what that prints. So what we can do is we can write a for loop. So for int I is equal to 0, I is greater than, or is I is less than the size of the array. So let's do 5, right? I plus plus. And what we're going to do is we're going to write system.out.println, or actually what we'll do is we'll set up a variable. So int temp for temporary is going to be equal to num array. And instead of hard coding like 0, 1, 5, 4, what we're going to do is we're going to do I. And what that does is it's basically going to say, hey, I is going to start at 0, which is going to be index 0. So if I is 0, it's going to be num array 0, which should print 24. then it's going to print, then I is going to print, I is going to be 1, then it's going to print number array 1, which is going to be 423. Then it's going to be 2, 3, 4, right? So what I want to do is I want to print out temp, and then that's it. So I'm going to save this value, and I'm going to open up my terminal, and from last time it's still in this directory, so I need to compile it. So java c arrays.java, and it should compile with no issue. There we go. And then now I'm just going to run it. So java arrays, and there we go. So we have 24, we have 423, and then we have 0, 0, 0. So for ints, 0 is the default value, right? Now let's say I have I make it so that this is a string array, right? So let's just do that right there. So I'm going to make this a string, str array, new string, and then instead of these being num arrays, so let's see. Num array, I'm gonna make these str arrays, str, and then instead of 24 and whatnot, let's have you know, duck, and let's have over here code. Cool. Save that, and then I also need to change this from string to num to str, and I think we should be good. So with that already done, let's go ahead and open up terminal again and compile it, and should compile with no issue. Oh, string cannot be converted. Oh, okay, well, yep, that makes sense. Instead of an int temp, this temporary value has to be a string temp. And back to terminal. I'm just gonna clear it so it's got rid of that clutter. Compile it again, and this time no issues. Yep. And let's run it. So now it's going to print duck code and then null, null, null. So if you remember to I think a few episodes ago, we talked about references versus primitives. So strings are reference types, and if the reference doesn't exist, then that reference is null. So the default value, right? I'm going to just type that over here, right? Primitives default is 0. 0, if it's a boolean, it's going to be false, and you know, depending on like what kind of a primitive, right? If it's an int, or I mean, if it's a float, it's going to be 0. Float or double 0.0, that kind of thing. And if it is a, actually, I should just keep that. And if it is a reference type, then the default value will be null, right? So that works in strings, works in integers, works in doubles with a capital D, and floats with a capital F. And we'll get into those in a later video. But for now, just remember that if you haven't filled it properly and it's a reference type, meaning it's a string, it's going to be null. If you have not filled it properly and it's a primitive, then it's going to be 0, false, or 0.0, depending on what kind of data value you're using. And so that's essentially what this is with the string. However, I do want to show you one last thing in case you ever mess up what to do with something like this, right? So instead of 1, let's say I write 5, right? And I want to resize this array, right? Because 5 is not going to be possible. So what I would have to do is I would have to say for int I is equal to 0, I is less than 5, which is the current thing, you know, the current size. I can't have this, first of all, be at 5 right now, so I'm going to put that in 1. And instead, I have this string temp. What I need to do is I need to copy that. So what I need to do is I need to initialize another array. So I'm going to write string array, and then new array is going to be a new string. And then what we usually do is we make it double the size that it originally was. So we'll make that 10. Cool. Now what we'll do is string temp is string array at 1. And instead of printing that value out, what we're going to do is we're going to say new array at I is going to be equal to temp. And so now it's going to copy all this information over, and then let's say I want to add something at index 5, right? So what I can do is a new array at 5 is going to be equal to new values. Cool. And then what I'm going to do is let's just have a quick print statement over here that shows everything. So for int I is equal to 0, I is less than 10 this time, I plus plus, and then over here we're gonna write string temp is equal to new array at I, and we're gonna finish it off by system.out.println. And here we're just gonna write temp. Cool. Now let's run this. So let's bring it back, terminal. Compile it. Hopefully no issues. Taking a little bit of time. Okay, cool. And then now we're gonna run it. So we can see we have at index 0 we have duck, index 1 we have code, index 2, 3, and 4 were null because that's how we set them originally. And now you can see that at index 5 we have new values, which we can see over here. That's what we set, and originally we only had from 0 to 4, so index 5 is a new addition. And so that's how you can copy your code over in case you need to resize it for whatever occasion. Thank you.